So today's guest is Alice Chu. She's only 28 and she's built one of the most successful croissant brands in Canada. It's called Hazukido and you've probably heard of it, and they have over 13 locations across Canada. And the craziest part about all of this is that while all of this was going on, running her business, she went and got a law degree and passed the bar. And she's kind of living proof that you can literally do anything and nothing is really impossible. And Alice talks a lot about the fact that building this brand as a young Asian woman has its own unique set of challenges and advantages. It's really difficult to build any business, but when you're the minority, when you hop on a Zoom call and you don't look like what people expect you to, it's just extra challenging. And I think the best part about Alice is that she is very unapologetically herself, and you get to see she doesn't give a fuck about what other people thinks, and she's kind of been quote unquote like that bitch and really embodies that energy no matter what she does. So if you're someone who wants to build your own business and you want to do it your way, if you're someone who wants to get into the food and beverage industry, this is definitely a podcast that you want to tune into. So enjoy. Anyways, welcome to the pod. I met you, I guess, today through Tuan, right?
Yeah.
So when he told me, like, how I knew about you was Tuan called me one day. He's like, oh my God, like, guess who I'm working with? I'm like, oh, who? Hazukido. I'm like, I haven't, like, I'm sure I've been to one of your stores and I bought a croissant and it was delicious, but I'm not like remembering the brand, you know what I mean? So then I'm like, oh, like, who's that? He's like, oh, like, it's crazy. Like, she's like 20 something. She has a law degree for some reason. She's not a lawyer. She owns a chain of bakery shops, and you guys have like what, 12 stores now?
We have 13 as of this weekend.
Yeah. So just growing every weekend. Crazy. Yeah. So then I was like, oh, like, who is she? So then like Tuan been working for you for a bit.
Yeah.
And then like I've been posting my own personal brand these days, and I know you want to do that too.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it's pretty cool because most of my guests so far, I've known them for like a year or two before they came on. You're my first guest that I don't technically know, but it's really cool because I know just enough about you where I'm like, I'm really interested. So I'll get to know you on the podcast, which is awesome. But yeah, so all I know is that you got a law degree for fun. Mm-hmm. Which is wild. Most people try their hardest their whole life to get that, and then you have like 13 locations for your Hazukido brand at the age of 27, right?
I'm 28, turning 29 this year.
Yeah, so basically 28, which is like wild, right? Like I feel like most of the people who own food businesses are like in their 40s and 50s when they've made their real money doing something else, because it's such a hard business to get into.
It is.
So I guess like tell me how you started and like how this story began.
Yeah, so that was not always the trajectory. Mm-hmm. Honestly, it started off like I had the trajectory pretty standard. Grew up, first gen immigrant. Eventually moved to Markham and then went to school in Markham, and then all my friends were going to Waterloo. So I'm like, oh, okay, I don't know what I want to do. Let's go to Waterloo. Just because they had the co-op program. Mm-hmm. So I started off arts and business degree there, and I was like, okay, what do I want to do? Maybe consulting. So I did a co-op stint at Deloitte. Realized that I hated it.
Yeah.
It was too bureaucratic and bullshit. And I always blame things on like, oh, because I'm a tourist, I don't like being told what to do. But I think since I was little, it was always kind of like, I don't want to be confined to a certain space or, title. And then started going through that. And then at that point I was like, okay, consulting's not for me. I was doing like a minor in HR, and I was like, I don't think HR is going to work out for me either, just because I don't give a shit about shit.
Yep. Yeah.
And then so I was like, okay, well, law was something I was always interested in. So that was kind of the trajectory by third year. And then when fourth year came around, like an opportunity came to enter into a business and do a Taiwanese dessert brand. So that was the first. How does
that opportunity
So
about?
My dad knew someone. My dad's pretty, always been supportive of these type of ventures, and just like, oh, okay, well, I think you can do it. I'm like, okay. So that brand was Meat Fresh, MEETFRESH, and it's a traditional Taiwanese brand. So we launched while I was wrapping up undergrad. And that's happened like 2018 January. I graduated end of 2018, and then at that point it was kind of like we were bootstrapped. We were launching. At that point we started franchising too. So I was doing that while wrapping up undergrad, and so then
Meat Fresh is like it's probably similar to like Sugar Marmalade kind of vibes, or I'm just trying to compare to what
Yeah. So Sugar Marmalade, actually, we're really good friends with them.
Nice.
Yeah. So I would say similar and yes and no. We would always say that like when we were first entering the market, we would say that we're like bubble tea in a cup because it's very based on like herbal jelly, like a lot of these Taiwanese elements.
Yeah.
And we only do desserts. So that was a big boom. And from that point onwards, as my friends were graduating and like going to their sexy Bay Street jobs, corporate jobs, like Big Four jobs, I was bootstrapping a company, like essentially myself and my co-managing partner. So he's always been a great mentor. He's quite a bit older than me. He's about 10 years older than me. But, you know, at that point, I was just strapped to the game and just trying to figure that out.
The game.
The game is hard. Like,
But like, is that something you expected? Like for me, I never, like deep down, I was like, cause my parents were entrepreneurs back in China.
oh, okay.
They tell me these stories, but there's this like fear of like, I would never live up to my parents' greatness. Like I'm just a kid. I grew up because they went through like the tail end of the Cultural Revolution.
Okay.
So like, I think sometimes the deeper the trauma, the greater the grit and success.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm like, oh, like I kind of like, I just grew up comfortable. Like nothing, I didn't grow up rich. I didn't grow up poor, just comfortable here. Once you immigrate, you gotta reset everything.
Yeah.
So I like didn't know if I had it in me to do it.
Yeah, of
Was
course.
this similar to you where like, did you have that kind of family influence of like, you knew you want to do your own thing? Or what was it like?
My parents were like, for us, education was very important just because my parents were university professors back in China.
Yes.
And then we immigrated and then they basically started fresh, right? So entrepreneurship to a certain extent, but of course, like in simpler words, was I scared of shitting the bed? Yes. But I think at the same time, I was very optimistic. Like through a lot of things that I've gone through, I've always been very optimistic. So I was like, hey, I can do it. I've always been ambitious in that sense, whether there's a clear direction or not, you know, running your own business, you don't know what to expect tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, we'll try it out and we'll just give it our all and see where it goes. And during that point in time, it was really hard because you have your friends that you would think like, oh, graduated and have these really sick signing bonuses. And I was barely paying myself, right?
Yeah.
Our brand started from zero, like you're marketing, you're pushing it forward, you make money from franchising, you're selling stores, right? And I didn't know anything. Like I had to learn all aspects of the business from payroll to like relationship management to franchising. And that was completely new too because
like 4 years of uni didn't help much.
Right? Like honestly, it doesn't.
It does
because
not.
during university, like I don't know if you have the same experience, but University of Waterloo was hyper competitive. Like to be honest, I almost dropped out at the end of first year. It was so hard to maintain like that academic.
It's like everyone's type A.
Yeah.
Everyone had 90 something average from high school.
Exactly.
It's different because high school was like not hard, but it wasn't that. Yeah, just wasn't that hard because you just have to be slightly above average to make
Status
it.
quo was fine in in high school, I'm sorry. And then in university it was like all these type A overachievers, and I've never been like super book smart, I would say. I just try hard where I can, and sometimes things that work they work, and other things they just don't work. Like I was constantly in math tutoring and my math never got better. It just it's just one of those.
I thought I liked math until I got to uni too.
Yeah. And I think I got 51 in first year calculus, and I was like, okay, well, let's see where it goes. And I was like on academic probation, and I was like, I don't think I can do this. And my mom's like, get your shit together. I'm like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
So I was like, at least I will just, you know, take it one step at a time. And I pivoted, and I was like, okay, I guess an econ major is not for me. So I switched into communications, which was great at the end of it. Like hindsight is 2020, right? So kind of, I guess we're jumping around, but in terms of where it was, fourth year, graduated, started bootstrapping this business, running it. All my friends were kind of like, they were supportive at that point because they were like, oh, it's a new venture. They didn't really give a shit, right? Because they're doing their own sexy corporate EY, Big Four jobs, like going into, I had a lot of investment banker friends, like, oh, going to Merrill Lynch. And they were just like, oh, that's cute. Like, she's doing her business.
Yeah. I think for them, everyone's life is all consuming.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is like, I was grappling with the same thing where like I started my business just last year, like 12 months ago.
Yeah.
And then I did feel some type of ways when I'm like, oh, why don't I feel like my non-business friends
Yeah.
or quote unquote like 9 to 5er friends,
Yeah.
why don't they care more about what I'm doing? But I realized, I just remembered, I'm like, I have a friend who's like an Olympic athlete and he competes in judo.
Okay.
And like, I realized I don't really care. Like, I care about him as a friend, but I don't comprehend what that's like.
Yeah.
It's so far out of my world. What is it
Yeah.
like to compete professionally?
Yeah.
So as much as we catch up once in a while, it's not that I don't care. I can't care because I don't know what it's like. And I'm like, and then that's helping me understand why maybe some of my friends who are in 9 to 5s, like they have no clue what this is like.
Exactly.
So then it's hard to like, what do you ask? Like what, they don't know what to ask, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like I was like a little hurt by that. And then
Yeah.
I kind of came over. I'm like, maybe you had like a similar
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Actually, that was something I really struggled with when Hazukido started popping off. So with Hazukido, we opened our first store in the midst of COVID, actually the second wave, so November 2020. And at that time, I was already scratching my itch to go to law school because I was like, okay, let's just try and kind of see where it goes.
At that point, Me Fresh was going well. I'm
Yeah,
assuming.
so Me
Great.
Fresh was stable, and that's when I felt comfortable with the support of my co-partner. Was like, yeah, like if you want to try it, because I'm someone that's very balls to the walls. Like if I feel like I want to do something, I'm gonna do it. And
The Taurus at heart.
yeah, very Taurus energy. So because for me during the academic confusion, I was like, oh, maybe I want to go to law school. So in 2019, I applied. I got into 2 schools, actually. One in Calgary, U of Cal, and also the other one in Australia.
Okay.
Yeah, and guess which one I picked?
Australia?
Yeah.
Damn.
So I packed up all my stuff and I was like, hey, see you
Wait, this
later.
is in the middle, like you were still running Meat Fresh.
Yeah.
And then you
Yeah.
were like, well, now that I've succeeded, it's getting boring. Let me go do law. Like, that's kind of.
I wouldn't say succeeded because I think that's such a general and like subjective term, but I
But
felt
like, it wasn't,
comfortable. I
it
felt
wasn't all
comfortable.
consuming day to day anymore. At some
Yeah,
point.
it was manageable.
Yeah, it was
So I
manageable,
started
okay.
building my team, and at that point,
So
I
you're like,
think I
what's
had-
next? Yeah.
Yes, I had like 5 or 6 people, and at that time, we found Hazukido in Taiwan. We were there for a business trip, and then my partner and I were like, we can do this. So I didn't know how long the contract was gonna take, and like negotiations, and
true.
whether we would get, part of Canada or all of Canada. So I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna do things in parallel.
Yeah.
And I was young, and I'm like, I'm not getting any younger, so let's just do it and kind of see where it goes. And no offense to Calgary, but it was just not for me. Like, I've been snowboarding since I was 8.
Never
not
say
good.
no offense. You're always offending, but I get what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Australia is pretty attractive. Yeah.
So I ended up on the Gold Coast, and kind of what the itch was from was I went to Singapore during undergrad during a study exchange. I didn't know anyone, anything. I didn't even know where it was on the map. Sorry to Singapore. Now it's like one of my homes. But but I was like, okay, let's just try it out and see, because when else are you going to be able to move to a different continent and just like live there, right?
Yeah.
Especially Australia. Like
Yeah.
for us, we're so far away, you never even imagine. So we finalized the contract while I was finishing up my first semester of law school. And I was like, okay, this is what I'm about, because in undergrad, it was difficult for me to retain the information or even care. Whereas for law school, I really enjoyed it.
It hits different. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, Hazu, our contract, we're in the final stages. We're going to start, going hard at it and expanding. So at that point, we already had some heavy hitters approach us in terms of landlords. So Cadillac Fairview, Brookfield Properties.
So they're out there approaching you because they're like, dang, you landed the contract. I want you to open in my mall first before.
Yeah. So we retain a brokerage. They're pretty big. They do Pizza, McDonald's, all those brands. And they created a deck. And, during those conventions at that point, or during those high-level meetings, they just mentioned it. And then we had all these landlords come and say, we want you to open in, the financial path, basically, or at one of these malls. So then 2020 rolled around. I was finishing up another semester of law school and COVID hit. So at this point in time, our plans for expansion kind of halted for a little bit because in the beginning of 2020, like people didn't know what was going on. All we knew was like, oh, this pandemic is
Yeah. Were you
in
stuck in
Asia
Australia?
for that point. Yeah.
Okay.
And then the government was like, okay, either you come back or you stay there because we're closing our borders indefinitely and we don't know for how long.
I remember that was March.
Yeah,
Scary.
March 2020.
Did you stay?
I came back
Oh.
because I was like, all my family is here.
Yeah.
My business is here and I'm there alone. And although it was great, like Australia was also starting to get shut down.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, I can't imagine if something actually happens.
Yeah, and that was like in hindsight, like we know now that it was fine.
Yeah.
But in the moment, I remember I was in Montreal on my own working at L'Oreal.
Mm-hmm.
And then when that news happened, like my parents called me and they were like freaking out. They're like, you gotta come back ASAP. Like who knows look, we might have a food short. Nobody knew. I forgot how scary it was going through it during like that 4 weeks. So yeah, it was the right move to come back for sure.
People were stocking up on toilet paper. They were like fist fighting each other for toilet paper. And I was like, oh my goodness, like I'm just by myself. Like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Right. So we came back and that was just a crazy time. At that point in time, we were like, do we open? Because businesses were closing. People were dying. We have a lot of friends in the food and beverage industry and everyone was laying off staff and essentially trying to survive.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, I was like, I made a hard call and I was like, I'm not laying off anyone because they need money to survive. So instead, like management took a pay cut and it was just a decision. It was not a decision that we were like announcing throughout the company and like, oh, this and that, look at what we're doing. It was just something that I thought we should do.
That's super commendable because I feel like most businesses don't do that. And if like you see it right now with the tech layoffs, like every company is laying off staff because it feels okay to do it.
Yeah.
Right. So like at the time, if you do it, there was not like nobody would bat an eye, nobody would complain because that's just how the world is.
Yeah.
But you decided to like do the right thing by your morals and values. And I think that's really dope. And you didn't have to like fucking flaunt and be like, guys, look, we took a pay cut. Just like, right. That's like you can donate and like not have to brag about it. Very commendable. That's very nice.
So because how I thought of it was these are frontline type of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like not the same level as our nurses and doctors at that point in time. And it was a very important thing to me because at that point I have family who are doctors and we're on the front line and I have friends who are nurses as well. So we did a lot of donations and we did what we could during that time. And for my staff, because they're frontline to a certain degree, like they're service people, like if anything, you should ensure that they have job stability and security.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, then I'll take my cut. Like I'll do what I have to do to make sure that one, they feel secure and for us to continue as long as we could. But at that point, you don't know, right?
Yeah.
You're like, I don't know how long I'm going to be locked down for.
Sure. I'm assuming your team was like obviously very grateful. And then I'm assuming some of them like are sticking for the long term.
Yeah.
Like, cause that's like at the end of the day, it's a like there's loyalty is two-way, but most of the time with like corporate jobs or sometimes like employers don't have that loyalty. Like I think a lot of times employees have a disproportionate amount of loyalty to the employer, but it's nice when you can build that two-way street and like it actually works out.
So we try the best we can, and obviously not one person is going to stick to a job forever. And that's something that we understand as well. But in that time and with us and their chapter with us, we just do the best we can. Like, nobody is perfect. And if we ever did something wrong, I try to be accountable for it. And I think that's just the way of running a business and just living life.
Yeah. So then COVID hit, you're going forward with the expansion plan. You're like, this isn't stopping us. Like, you're just very, very much an optimist.
Maybe I'm delusional, I guess. But at that point, we were like, okay, we're gonna work while everyone sleeps. That was kind of the vibe. Because at that point, everyone's, downsizing their business and just not knowing what to expect. And we're like, okay, we're gonna launch this. Because when else are you gonna launch it, right? Like, you need something to do during COVID. So I was doing law school online and trying to manage that and also manage like the fears of COVID within the company. And that was the hardest part. Rather than doing the store, it was really like giving security to the employees, the staff, and really being optimistic for them.
Yeah.
So we launched first store November 2020, downtown Toronto, and it was crazy. Like I think we broke, we had lineups for 4 weeks, and I am so grateful and
That's
so
so
blessed.
wild. That's so insane. What do
Yeah.
you think like really made the launch so successful in hindsight? Like what was going well for you guys at the time to
I
have a
think
4 week lineup? Like that's
I
fucking nuts.
think it was the fact that it was a new concept, and we really created excitement around the quality of our products. So we use aloe vera butter, Japanese flour, and that was something very different for the market. So hence why I said I like to say that we're market innovators and leaders. This was something that not a lot of people were doing, right? So we're very proud of the brand, and it was a lot of brand positioning that we worked really hard on. And with this brand, it was very different from the previous brand or the other brand that we're doing because we had full reins. So with the launch in the North American market, it was really from my team and I.
Got it. So you were able to adapt stuff for the local market and you weren't like you just didn't have a lot of you could play outside the box, right?
Yeah.
You had a lot more freedom. That's
Yeah.
really cool. I kind of like about product innovation. I think so. I took a trip to Korea with my fiance in October.
Nice.
And then when you go to Asia and you're just like, wait, why is every cafe like so beautiful?
Yeah.
And why does everything taste so good? And you're like, why am I about to go back to Toronto and pay $6 for a super mid croissant, right?
Yeah.
You're like, what is this? So I
Yeah.
feel like you're totally right. Like whatever, like Asia is definitely ahead of the game in
Yeah.
terms of food, and I think it's really dope that you're bringing that here and like we get to enjoy like a slice of that because like
Yeah.
honestly, some bakeries here is just like I get it, like blueberry muffin, cool, but
Yeah.
like give us some new stuff, like some cool stuff, you know?
And I think this was like an underlying tone or transformative part of my exchange in Singapore. So when I was in Singapore, I was staying in like staying in student living because you're an exchange student. So we didn't have air conditioning.
Dude, so
40
Sally
degrees.
was in exchange in Singapore for
Yeah.
4 months, and I
Yes.
went to visit her.
Yeah.
And like you would just like drip when you're outside,
That's
and
what
you
I'm
go
saying.
somewhere indoors at like a clinic, and it's like freezing.
Yeah.
But that place is so humid. You feel like you're in a
Yeah.
you're like a dim sum getting just like steamed. You know?
I know. And as a result, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna peace out whenever I can. So I
You
was
just
going,
never stayed in.
I was
Yeah.
going all over Asia. I was in, that was my first trip to Taiwan. I went to Hong Kong, Indonesia, Malaysia.
Yeah, Singapore's actually
Japan.
close to everywhere. It's
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah.
So I think it's so crazy how the universe is because at that point in time, I never thought about going to food and beverage, but I was always just infatuated with going to new places in Asia, trying their food, and just really being immersed in their culture. So it's just crazy how everything's aligned. And then that's kind of the trajectory of my life later on.
I see. Yeah, you didn't see it coming.
Yeah.
But you just love food, and then it just happens to be that you're doing something at food.
Yeah.
that makes sense.
And so I think that's kind of what set it off, like in terms of fueling the fire.
I see.
Because at that point in time, I was still kind of, I would say timid, because I don't think any of my friends would call me timid, but not so assured in myself in terms of what my career is going to look like, what I'm going to do with my life. I've always been ambitious, and it was definitely difficult. And I think a lot of women can relate to that because you know, there's certain expectations, and
Yeah.
you know, you have a timeline, and
Yeah.
with the industry I'm in now, both law and food and beverage, it is so heavily male dominated. Like it's actually crazy. A lot of people don't expect to see me when after, you know, we've been chatting through email, a lot of landlords or like doing collaborative initiatives, and then they see me, they're like, oh, you're a lot younger than I expected. So it's been an uphill battle, like, and adding just the element of being younger and being like Asian.
Yeah, so you have like age, gender, ethnicity.
Yeah.
You got the triple threat of barriers.
Yeah. So it was crazy. And like the I think the anticipation for the brand was a lot too. So it was definitely a lot of stressful nights leading up to the opening, and people enjoyed it. There was obviously a lot of feedback. Everyone has an opinion. So that was also difficult as a young Asian female
Yeah,
to
'cause you
deal
pour
with.
your heart into this, and
Yeah.
then everyone's gonna be like, "Well, the ceiling,"
Yeah.
and they give you a 4-star. You're like, "What the?" Fuck?
Well, it was a
Like,
lot of like
people-
education that we had to gap. So here, a lot of brands they don't use 100% pure butter for the croissants, and hence why they're able to make these massive croissants. However, ours is very French inspired. We use aloe vera butter, and just culturally in France, you eat smaller.
The serving
croissants.
size, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So here it was just like a shock. Everyone's like, oh my God, how can you charge so much for something so small? And it's something that, an uphill battle that we as a brand and anyone can kind of see, that you have to continuously educate the market.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is fine. Like we've gone to a point where we're pretty stable and people kind of understand what they're getting into. But when we were getting feedback of that first, I was like, oh my God, how can you not understand? Like, look at us versus look at blah, blah, blah.
It makes. I mean, like, if you want the best, like, biggest croissant, just go to Costco, right?
Yeah,
And then like, but why do people buy Apple? Like, why do people drive Porsches? Like, it's like, and I think like that's also something I've grown in the recent years where I'm like, oh, like I get why people want the nicer things in life. You want quality, you want things that last.
Yes.
But then like younger me would just be like, that's ludicrous. But and then that's just like a matter of like like the age/income level. That's literally what it is, right? Like at the end of the day, it's like but then there's certain things, I don't know, my parents are like weirdly frugal. I think it's based on their
Immigrant
lifestyle.
trauma.
Yeah, immigrant trauma, but then they're also like retired right now, so they'll like line up for 2 hours at Costco to get like $4 difference off of like a discounted item.
Yeah.
Right? But like that's them.
Yeah.
But then they're also down to like they're like, but my mom's like, oh well, like a purse will always hold as value.
Yeah.
Like the $4 Costco thing, but she won't like hesitate to buy a purse because she's like, well, I want that because it's a nice thing for me,
Yeah.
and like I know retain value forever. So like it's very different what people value. It's emotional, or it's like, or like they're kind of really frugal when it comes to eating out, but they're okay with other stuff. So it depends. I guess.
It does depend. And I think you get to a point where you kind of realize like, oh, eating that much shortening or certain ingredients are not good for my body.
Yeah.
So I think we've come a long way in terms of education for our customers, and that's something we're continuously trying to do. But yeah, quality, quantity type of thing.
Do you know the concept of like the other kids, like as in like when moms post on Facebook or WeChat, and like, or like growing up, you're like practicing piano, and then your mom's like, oh well, like my friend's kid like did that. Do you know that like saying?
I know of it, but my parents never did that.
Okay, lucky for you. But anyways, but I think what I was gonna say when you were talking about going to law school, and opening up Hazukido is I'm like, fuck, like you ruined it for so many other kids, because like you're gonna be the other kid that other parents tell people. It was like, oh well, look at Alice, like you're only going to law school. She's in law school and that. Like, how can you complain about law school? Like you're out here literally like, you're like, I feel like from the outside, the typical thing that people would tell you, be like, oh, it feels like you're like a superhuman. Like you're doing all this stuff while most people struggle to do one. You're doing all this. What do you feel like is, whether it's like, is it something growing up that taught you this, or is just character? Like, how do you have this, like, it just feels like you have a really crazy drive. Right?
So I've actually been doing a lot of reflective work now that I've kind of slowed down. And I think it's nature and nurture, because growing up, I call myself an only child, but I do have a younger brother. I've been
Bro.
he wasn't around until I was 7.5, so we have quite a big age gap, and he wasn't a real person until I was 10.
That's true. You
right?
basically, you grew up as an only child for the majority of your childhood.
So because of that, I've always been used to having my needs met. And once it got to a point where I didn't need my parents to meet my needs. I would meet my own needs. And that was kind of like, oh, I want to do this, so I'm going to do it. So I think it's also a personality thing. I have a Leo moon, if anyone knows.
As Ariana once said, I got it, right?
Type of thing.
Yeah.
Type of thing, yeah. So I think it's just I've been ambitious, and like I said in undergrad, I didn't really know what I was doing. But then once I had a vision, once starting my business and kind of wanting to scratch the itch of law school, I went full force.
I see. Did the itch, was the itch scratch? Was it satisfying to scratch it?
Yes and no. I mean, it's been a hard couple of years. Like, it's hard because you want to live your young adulthood, just really living, right? Like going to the bars, having that nightlife. You don't want to be looking at your work phone at 10 p.m. at the bar. And I was doing that. But I also recognize there's compromises you have to make in order to get to a certain point in your life where you have options and freedom, right? So for me, it's really important to me that I have options. So in the future, if I don't want to do business anymore, I want to be able to rely on my law firm. And
you just want to diversify. You don't want to, like, all my eggs is in the food and bev, and if that goes to shit, I'm screwed. Like, you just want to be able to do many things, right?
Not only like going to shit, but just like if I get bored of it.
Yeah, you're probably more worried about that. You're like you want to be multidisciplinary, and now you're gonna get into like online content, which is that's really fun.
I think I have a very interesting story. I never really thought I did. I was just I'm just living my life, and I met a couple of new friends in my adulthood, and they're like, holy shit, like this is cool. And I'm like, and they're like, I wish like I have a lot of younger friends too, so they're like, oh, I wish I had someone like you to at least coach me or just give me some advice growing up.
Show that this path is possible.
Yeah.
Because you, like, the other thing with, like, maybe doing your own thing that's really tough in general is that if you're an accountant, if you're a lawyer, you can easily find, like, 50,000 other people doing that at different stages in their life. Talk to them. What is it like? Oh, cool. Like, you have some idea of what this path looks like. And then as an entrepreneur, you have no clue. Like, you find a handful of people, and then all of their journeys are so weird and different that you go like, you just kind of have to forge your own, really, right?
Especially as a woman who's Asian and young.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these really cool female leaders, they're CEOs at these Fortune 500 companies.
Which is a different game.
It's a different game. And I respect them immensely. And I don't think I could do that because there's so much glass ceiling and red tape that you have to go through. And it's a different game you're playing, right? But as young entrepreneur, who do you really have to lean on?
Yeah.
Especially as an Asian woman.
Did you, earlier you were talking about, as you were graduating fourth year, you said like your friends were going to fancy 9-to-5s. And then you mentioned something about like something until Hazukido was popping off.
Yeah. So they were all, this is a very interesting, transformative.
Yeah. Talk your shit, girl. Yeah. Talk your shit.
aspect that I realized too. And for me, it was all la-di-da. Everyone was like pretty happy for you. Like they would come to the store until Hazukido started popping off. And then people that I thought were really close in my peer group, the congratulations started just like becoming non-existent, and like the reach outs and just the like really nice messages were just slim to none. And I started not getting invited to things. So I don't know if it's because a couple times where they invite me, I was like, oh, sorry, I can't make it. I'm busy, like have to go to work. But they were accommodating people who were working long hours that were in like trading or like investment banking or other things, right? So that's when I realized the disconnect. And it was just very disappointing. And I think the ultimatum in terms of the ultimate kind of end to it and was when I graduated law school and I didn't really get any congratulations.
Damn.
So that was really tough. Like, not only are you running your business, but doing that in parallel with trying to do law school. It's not that law school was easier for me relative to anyone else.
It's almost harder.
Yeah, it was harder because I couldn't focus on one thing, right? I have to be responsible for so many different things. And maintaining your social group is also a responsibility.
Yeah.
And I thought I did the best I could. And I realized that, maybe both sides just had a disconnect, but it really hurt me when I didn't get any congratulations or any flowers or anything like that, because I'm a big celebrations kind of girl. Maybe because I'm a Taurus, I don't know. But whenever my friends went through something pivotal or their birthdays, I try to show up the best way I can. And it was really disappointing to see that amongst my peer group. And my fiance put things into perspective, because I was telling him, I was like, why is this so hard for me to be different and have people be happy for me? And he's like, maybe it's not just the fact you're different. Like, what if they think, you're doing better than them?
I mean, you are.
I mean, that's subjective. Like, I have my own struggles. Everyone has their struggles, right? So
yeah, in their eyes, you are doing better than them. Yeah.
So I think it's just shitty and it sucks. But those were just like some peers from university. I'm like, okay, I guess just our friendship was never that deep, and that's okay. I still have I have great friends that I've known since grade 4 high school, and I've met in other areas of life that like ride or die and show up for me when I need them to. And it's just always interesting to see, because I've always surrounded myself, so I thought, with like very supportive people that I would show up for. So that was very difficult and really discouraging to a certain extent, because it's kind of like I don't deal with betrayal well. And I go from like 0 to 100. And I can, just not show a really good side of me. But then, I was going through it for a little bit. And then after I realized, I'm like, there's nothing I can do. Like, this is maybe the trajectory of our paths.
Yeah, that's really tough to go through, though. I'm super sorry to hear that. My mom actually said this as she went through like when she did her business with my dad back in China.
Yeah.
This was back in the 80s.
Okay.
So I think like this is when, I mean, China is still kind of like this, but it's like a dog eat dog world.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like here, like, like I have friends who are doing very similar business as me.
Yeah.
And we still help each other out because
Yeah.
it's so abundant. But that mindset is so different in China. And then she was just saying like, yeah, like you just, it's only like if you watch TV, there's like a lottery winner. You don't get jealous because it's a stranger.
Yeah.
Like, you can only be envious and jealous of family or friends.
That's so crazy.
Like, those are the only two groups of people, and close friends, right?
Yeah.
If it's a friend of a friend, like I have a friend of a friend with like a 1 million subscribers on YouTube. I'm like,
Oh, nice.
I'm not like, I'm so happy for her, right? But say that was like my bestie, and then like I'm also doing YouTube and she blows up, like maybe I would get jealous. But like, you can only get jealous of friends and family. And that was a really cool concept that I was like, oh shit, like that's actually true. Like it's only the people who are close to you that are able to betray you or able to be jealous, because people from far away, oh my God, congrats, like happy, like it's not real to them.
Yeah.
Right. And then so when she told me, I was like, oh, that's kind of facts. So she's like, you just want to be like wary, and you don't want to like be too sort of like don't expect too much of people. And she also said like, this is again like her experience growing up in China at that time. So I think she's slightly more cynical, but I think she's also been through so much. But she's like, it's your wife and your parents, those are like the three people that are like, sorry, your partner or your parents, these are the three people that are almost 100% not going to get jealous.
Yeah.
And then everyone else, as you just expand outwards, the jealousy and envy will like just grow in stages. But then I've been talking to my therapist about this, because
Oh my God, I'm in therapy too.
Yeah. That's when you know you made it. But I've been talking to her, and she's saying a couple of things. She's like, well, number one, it's like, she's like, it's totally fine for people to be envious or jealous. And that's like their growth to go through. It's not your fault. And it's like, you just have to let them go through that, because it's just, they just have to go through character development, right? In that sense. So like, it's not, you shouldn't try to shine less bright and whatever.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. And the second thing is like, my therapist is like, when so this is a different one. I'm saying he, because this is a different one from before.
Nice.
But he had a stepdad that was really rich.
Okay.
And he grew up in like a pretty poor neighborhood and family. So he would be really ashamed to, invite his friends over to his stepdad's house or his new house because they lived in such a nice place. And they were worried that his friends would like be jealous or make fun of him. Like you would get made fun of for being rich because all your friends are struggling, right? So that was a kind of interesting thing that he went through. And then what he kind of ended up learning over time, he's like, at the end of the day, like you are judged based on your character.
Yeah.
And like if you are rich or whatever it is, but if you have a good character, like people shouldn't, like it's not justified for people to hate on you. So as long as you're not a rich asshole,
Yeah.
then there shouldn't like it's not your fault. Like if people hate on you, it's not your fault unless you're like flaunting it and being insensitive and be like, oh my god, like you haven't traveled in Europe, you have like people do that type of shit, like right, like if you're not being annoying, then I think it's really not your fault. You should let your candle shine and live your best life, and kind of like basically fuck the people who are envious, but it's really hard to go through this,
and it's harder as a woman. I'm sorry to be one of those.
Oh, because your guy friends are like, yo, how is she, like, you know what I mean? Like,
it's like
she's been doing better than me as a woman, so
both,
they feel threatened kind of thing. Yeah.
It's harder as a woman who likes to buy things.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like what I've realized too, right? I'm like, I was like, oh, like, I don't get it. And then my therapist was also like, okay, well, do you know the idea of projection? And I'm like, and then that's how I learned that concept of like, okay, people project their insecurities on you. And it's crazy. Maybe I grew up kind of just in my own fishbowl, but my mom, like my parents are super progressive. They've been advocates for education, and that's because they know that education to a certain extent gives you discipline. So hence why when I was like, oh my God, I'm almost about to drop out, my mom's like, finish it. Because she knew I could do it. So in terms of envy and all these things, they were never like, oh, you're better than someone else or they're better than you. Like there was never that comparison. I was always very safe and free to do my own thing. So maybe that's why I'm just in my own fishbowl. And as I got into adulthood, I was like, oh, why can't people be happy for me when I get this, that, or when I do this and that? So it was a learning curve for me as well. And I think for like what you were saying, do your own thing, shine bright. It's easy to shine bright as a man. As a woman, it's a little more complicated. I have a really great fiance. I have a great partner, and I have a good career. I have a great home life. I'm very appreciative and grateful for everything I have. But you still have those people that are kind of, why does she have that? Instead of how.
Yeah.
They don't see the behind the scenes, right? Because I'm very private. This for me in terms of filming content and putting myself out there is very new. And I really believe in energy too, like the evil eye. So I try to.
I mess with my business partner for my jewelry brand.
Yeah.
He's so into the evil eye. It's just funny. He's like the only other person I know.
Yeah.
But like maybe I need to start believing that too. There's something.
No, I do. I think it's energy. So I don't want people, to feel some type of way. And that's something my therapist was saying too. Like you should live your authentic self. That's what I always advocate for. And she's like, if you're not shining as bright as you can be, that's not being authentic. So hence why I'm putting myself in more uncomfortable positions and putting it out there, because I feel like I do have a good amount of knowledge I can share with women or other women in different, areas of their career or men. Hey.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that whatchamacallit, like it's I people used to ask me, oh, how's this business been going? And I used to give like a very half-assed answer. And then recently, like past 3 to 4 months, I'm trying to just give it like the very real answer of like how are things really in it. I think being authentic makes it a lot better. I think like on the note of like say even comparison and ego, I think what might be tough for say people who are working like a 9-to-5 job is that when I was working in corporate for 4 years before I quit my job, and I know that for me a huge part of my identity was tied to your job and your income and your like kind of seniority, because for 8 hours a day that's what you do, but then outside of the 8 hours you have your coworkers and you have other, so like I think when you compare what most people do is they pick one point of their life, one aspect, and they take one aspect of yours and they draw a direct comparison. They're like, oh, you're better than me. But what they don't see is that there's infinite like points in people's lives. And then what they don't see is all the hardships that you've been through. I was talking to my fiance the other day where I'm like, oh, like we are doing really well. And then sometimes we're like, do we, like, I guess in a sense, like, do we deserve it? Like, how are we like doing this well? And then what I was reflecting was like, yeah, like I'm definitely working at least 20 times harder than when I used to at my corporate job.
Yeah.
Like minimum 20 times harder
Yeah.
because you're always on and the effort you put in is so different. And so that means I'm probably working 20 times harder than the next person who's working a regular 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with working 9 to 5. Like I think my life would perfectly be fine and I'm happy if I stayed. But it's like if you're willing to work 20 times harder, then the reward should be there, right? Like right, like this didn't just come out of thin air. Like this is, and then I guess it's great that you're sharing this because like I love to get into more of like I guess like the hardships or like the journey because like it is like I think that doing retail and food is one of the hardest business to run, period. Right? Because sometimes I'm at home like, oh, like I run everything downstairs. Like that's my office. Yeah. Right? Like I have like 2 computers, 4 monitors. That's it. That's all I need. Yeah. Like my parents like, so what's like, how's your profit margin? Like how's your startup cost? Like, do you need at least, I'm like, no, like it's just like, and they're like, what the heck? Like, you know? So I'm like, I like as much as my business was tough, there's like a whole different side of hardship that people walk into a store, oh, it's beautiful. Yeah. Oh, this croissant tastes good. They don't see like the thousands of hours that went into it. So I think if you like, I love that you're sharing this now because like you get to, people really appreciate how good the damn croissant tastes if they know how hard it was to get everything up and running. You know?
I mean, it's all facets of the business, right? Like from staffing, that's a whole other ball game. Like dealing with people. So I'm lucky enough to have good operations managers, but that oversee our retail managers, that oversee the retail supervisors and the part-time, full-time staff. But in order to get a good, solid manager, there's so many hours you have to put into training them and coaching them in terms of what angle to really approach certain things. And then that's just people management. Yeah. And then you have quality control. And that's very hard, all in all. Like anyone in food and bev will tell you that's so difficult, especially if you're franchising, you're managing a bunch of different
people
stores.
come and they have one bad experience. They're going to leave they're going to tell 5 friends. They're not going to come back. Like you have to show up consistently. Exactly. Every single day, every hour. The food has to be good. Like that's
I think
tough.
with anything, consistency is key. Like it's actually crazy. So you have quality control. And then during COVID, logistics was such a nightmare. Like it was getting reefers we import a lot of our ingredients, hence why we're able to maintain a certain amount of consistency. So with reefers, like logistics costs were up 500%. 500.
Damn.
So now with the rising food costs and inflation, it's like managing that and also being very cognizant and aware of your everyday consumer. So, you know, it's not like we can raise prices 500%.
Yeah.
We have to be cognizant of that, right? And not only do we have croissants, but we also have espresso beverages. We have teas. So we're leaning into all areas, but they all make sense. Like we're not doing something like, deep fried chicken balls. So it's like ensuring, and it's hard because once you have skin in the game and you're working on the day-to-day things, the little things that come up, you have to take time to step back and really assess, is everything that we're doing making sense to the original vision and mission of the brand? Is that aligned? Because what happens is a lot of brands, they have expanded to a point and they just throw everything in there, and then they
like shiny object syndrome. They're like,
yeah,
like,
and then
like Happy Meals,
panini. for like a bubble tea brand, right? And it's starting to not make sense.
And it makes their operations more complex.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we not only do have to stand in the shoes of, you know, the brand owner, but also your franchisee and your consumer. And sometimes you have to stand from a position of the landlord. You know, am I giving them what they were originally looking for when we first signed on to the lease and we first launched in there, right? So that is so difficult to manage. And I have head office staff. I have a whole marketing agency I need to manage. I have my retail staff.
Can I wanted to like ask something because I'm like there is just so much to go into. So maybe I'll ask it in like 3 tiers. So like maybe like so say 21-year-old Alice. Say the person watching is a 18 to 22-year-old girl who is Asian and a woman and is young, and she's like, "Yo, Alice is fucking badass. I want to be like her."
Yeah.
What advice would you give her to say she wanted to follow your path? What advice would you give her? Then the next question would be like, so say young Alice, like, well, let's just call her Vanessa. Like Vanessa, this persona is Vanessa, right?
Okay.
Like, or Vivian. Like Vivian's a very so say like Vivian,
Like a random Asian name.
yeah.
Okay.
So say like so then Vivian goes and like opens her first shop. So as a first time owner, what do you do there?
Yeah.
And then maybe like at how many locations do you have for Meat Fresh?
We have,
Or when you were about to do Hazukido back then, how many locations for Meat Fresh?
I think we had 6.
Okay, so then
or
so
7?
say like
Yeah.
say she grew it to 6.
Yeah.
Now what? So like those are 3 questions. So we
Yeah.
can like kind of
Okay.
group it. So then so say Vivian is like 20 years old. She's watching this. She's like, yo,
Yeah.
like I'm just trying to get like Alice. Like
Yeah.
how can she? What are the steps that she could take? But maybe it's not even about the steps because I think when I was making my content, I realized, oh, I could tell people how I landed my first client. I could tell
Yes.
people how I structure my service, but like each person's life and path and opportunities are infinitely complex.
Exactly.
So really it's about, for me, my conclusion was you need to like turn off your brain and take action. Like people who overthink, you fuck yourself.
Yes.
Right? Because this is a computer, right? And so you're trying to analyze stuff you don't know.
Yeah.
You're just going to get stuck. So
Yeah.
turn off your brain and just do it.
Yeah.
And then you need awareness of if things are good or bad and you need to pivot.
Yeah.
And that's probably the only 2 things. Like maybe then like a good support system, right? You want to be mental. So these are the 3 things I feel like is the core pillars of, and that could apply to anything.
Yeah.
But I guess for you, like whether it's mindset stuff, whether it's tactical stuff, whether it's like literally a book or a resource or a YouTube channel, like let's start with the 18-year-old Vivian who's just trying to, she's like, yo, I love Japanese food. I love South Korean food. I'm gonna open my own South Korean foods joint in Toronto. Like,
I think as an 18-year-old, it's very ambitious.
fine, 21, same age as you. 21, 22 when you started.
I think one is stay authentic to yourself.
Stay real.
Stay real. Whether, you're a timid girl or you're a very balls to the walls, stay authentic. And prior to now, even the last couple of years, it was always a struggle between, oh, this is who I see, like either on socials that I think is doing really well, and myself, and trying to wear different hats and trying to balance, like, oh, should I be like this type of person and accentuate certain traits of them, or should I just do my own thing?
Like modeling your persona after someone else that you see. Like, who are the people that you see that you were considering modeling after?
I don't even remember anymore because like that was such a 21-year-old thing.
You're like, I'm trying to be Steve Jobs.
Yeah, or like I'm trying to be like David Goggins. Like David Goggins for me his book was very transformative in terms of just stay hard and do it.
Stay real and hard.
Yeah, stay real and hard, to be honest. But I'm not hard because I'm a very emotional creature. And I really lean into interpersonal relationships, and that's kind of what got me to the where I am. I'm not, like rubbing shoulders with everybody, but I show up authentic as myself, and I'm very honest in terms of okay, this is what I'm comfortable with. This is what I'm uncomfortable with. And this is where I think we can work something out. A lot of times, really hard conversations or like conflict can be resolved just from leaning in and having an authentic and candid conversation. So whether in my personal life, in my business life, I'm not very transactional. I like to develop relationships and really understand you as a person and see if I can work with you, your company, or hire you, so forth and so on. So one is stay authentic to yourself. You can be like
Good advice.
you can adopt like a lot of different personas or things that you think that have traits that other people have, which you think catapulted them to their success, but you're not that. You're just you. You have one life. Be true to who you are. And there's a lot of groundwork that needs to be done. You really have to understand yourself.
Yeah, that makes sense. Would you say like part of the be authentic, be real part is also like having the courage to be yourself, like in a situation where there's things that you're feeling and you want to say, having the courage to say what you really feel, that is part of authenticity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
think that's
courage is
fair.
hard, right? Like, especially as a 21-year-old, you honestly don't know anything.
Yeah, your prefrontal cortex barely developed. You're just
Yeah.
like you're just like life, you're just going through it.
Yeah.
You know?
And up until the age of 18, sometimes 20, it's your parents guiding you what to
Yeah.
do, right? Like, I didn't even realize why I was in university until second year.
Yeah,
Right? Because it's your parents telling you, coaching you, or your whatever, the 5 people surrounding you kind of coaching you. You're just adopting different social norms based on them. So that when you're young, really take time to understand yourself. Go see the world if you can. I know, like whatever you can do, try to dip your toes in everything that may be a little bit of an interest to you. Read books. I'm a big reader. Now I read because I have to read as my profession, but I still try to read occasionally, listen to podcasts like this. Do things that spark joy.
Yeah, like just try things and you
Try
never
things.
know what's gonna
Yeah.
hit or not, but you have to try.
My co-op experience was so like all over the board. Like I was in consulting and then I was in HR and then I went to one of the biggest law firms in all of Canada. And even at the law firm, I wasn't doing legal work. It was like business development and marketing. Just try different things. It's equally as important to know what you dislike relative to what you do like.
Yeah, because otherwise you're just like, if you don't know what you don't like, then you're just like, "Oh, I don't know what I like." Like you're
Yeah.
just stuck. You just have to try things and be like, well, if I don't like it, that's great. I know I don't like this, and you
Yeah.
just move on.
And it's okay to accept the status quo for a lot of things. Not everyone has to be like me, right? However, if you do have certain ambitions, you really need to do the groundwork. And where you and I are and building our business, it's you, right? It's yourself. Like I can give someone else the roadmap of where I got to where I am, but if you don't have certain tenacities to your personality or certain aspects of your personality, maybe the outcome will not be the same.
Yeah.
So stay authentic to you and just do it.
Yeah, just do it, Nike.
Yeah, just do it.
Okay, so that's for 21-year-old Vivian. Say Vivian is now like 23, 24. She's got her first like shop. It could be food, it could be whatever her business is.
Yeah.
So I guess like just thinking back to when you first started, like that first year to two, what would be some advice in hindsight that you would give like at that stage? Right? You're already on the path, you're strapped into the game.
Yeah. I would say remove your ego. That's a big thing because with our environments, to a certain extent, we always think we're right. With your partner, you always like, my partner is great, so I always think I'm right. Yes, I am always right. In your family, like you always think you're right, and sometimes reality hits, and you have to understand it's just business. It's not personal, it's just business. And a lot of the times, because of our ego, we take it to the next level. And that is a very hard lesson. That's an ongoing lesson, We face our ego in different contexts and in different situations. Business particular, like especially if you're operating within a framework like a franchise, it's great. Certain things are done a certain way for a reason. So remove your ego in those situations. Even when you're coming to have a conversation, remove your ego. Just talk facts. And our egos inflate the drama, I would say.
Yeah, I think it's like it's especially tough about the whole like you think you're right or always right thing, because if you're a year or two into your business, you probably made a shit ton of right decisions up leading up to that.
Yeah.
So you're like, yo, I am right. Like I've been
so
right.
smart.
I'm so sorry. And then like whenever you realize, like it just always catches you off guard.
Yeah.
Something I always tell to my clients and stuff, like as a disclaimer, but also to keep my ego in check. I'm like, yeah, like this is how I do things, and then this is what ads I think I'm gonna work. Like I am happy to eat my own words. Like I love to be wrong. So then I'm like, great. Like now I'm learning something new. But from my experience, like this will work and this will work for you, sort of thing. So like even when you like think within yourself is like, oh, like I hope this idea works. And if it doesn't, like, well, that's also great, because like now I know the better method is somewhere else, and I have to just look over there, and I'm not stuck doing what doesn't work. I think that's great advice. Anything else in terms of like, anything else in terms of like overall, I feel like right now is just purely mindset.
Yeah.
That you're spitting some mindset game.
I'm a
But
mindset girl.
but what about like, I don't know, do you feel like
things?
I guess like the actual things, I'm kind of in the same camp of you where, well, at least my business it's an online, it's like paid ads. I feel like this space as a whole has so much information online. People, like I get hundreds of DMs asking me how to get started. I'm like, yo, Alex Hormozy dropped all the game in online marketing and sales. Just look him up and like just go do it. Like I can't tell you anything you don't know. If you want to make ads, Dara Denny drop all the game. So like, I can't really tell you anything. But do you feel like in the food niche, there's less content online, or maybe I just haven't looked?
There's like slim to none.
Yeah.
It's kind of like good luck, Chuck.
So maybe do you want to drop some actual
Knowledge.
executional stuff? Or do you feel like that's like,
Yeah,
if people want to see?
Buy my coaching.
Wait, are you actually coaching?
No, not yet.
Okay.
But that's the trajectory. Like, I think there's a lot of value to that. I would say one.
Like a book would be hard, low-key.
Yeah.
Like I think like
You wouldn't be able to get a book for it. Like, I would say one of the biggest things you can do, if you can, is to find a mentor. Someone in the same industry. Food and bev is hard, especially as a woman. But I would say find a mentor. I've been very lucky that my co-managing partner is older than me, and he's guided and facilitated some things in terms of like how to execute.
Yeah.
Execution is the hardest.
So say you had to find a mentor all over again today.
Yeah.
You're a 21-year-old Vivian. You had to find a mentor. How do you go about doing that?
Connect with Alice on LinkedIn. I'm just kidding.
Or say like I'm
put-
sure people reach out to you and they want you as a mentor to them, right?
Yeah.
What are the qualities you're looking for from that mentee, from that hungry kid who's just like, you know, who's down to go and do stuff? Like how would you determine if they're worth your time?
I want to see if they have grit. Because it's not
Go run a marathon.
yeah. I look at the person, right? So I have to kind of observe what kind of person they are. You can't have your head in the clouds. You can't have a big ego. You have to realize that it's not going to be an easy journey in order for me to take you on. And you have to accept that life will be an ever learning process. Be a student for everything.
I guess you just chat with them and you can kind of get a sense.
I can get the
you
vibe.
vibe check.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So don't be a know-it-all because you're not. And one of the best, like some of the best mentors or conversations I've had with other people in the industry are with people who are much, much older than me, in their 60s, 70s, people who have founded massive companies that own lots of buildings in, you know, whether here or in Asia. And they are just some of the most humble, chillest people ever. And their outlook on life is always the fact that they're a student of life. You can't let shit rock your boat. It's very easy when you run your own business. Some things, you wake up, you check your phone, you're like, you start losing your shit. But you just have to take it with gratitude. So some tangible things, like if you want to keep your mental wellness in check, which is one big thing that I've started leaning into in the last 2 years, and I would advise on everyone, is practice gratitude and move your body.
Great advice. It's like scientifically proven.
It
Like
is.
your immunity is better.
Yes.
It takes like, it takes 10 minutes a day. It's not that long.
Yeah.
I heard this one guy who said that it's like you can, when you practice gratitude, you can be grateful. Like you can be grateful even harder
Yeah.
if you don't pick the obvious shit. Like, oh, I'm healthy. Like,
Yeah.
oh, like don't do the obvious shit. Do
Yeah.
like the non-obvious stuff you never
Yeah.
thought about.
I'm so grateful I'm suing people. This is a new learning opportunity. Niche, but I don't know. Maybe some of you business owners can relate.
Damn. Do
Yeah.
you want to get into it? Do you want to talk about it?
Maybe next podcast.
Yeah. We'll
Keep everyone on their toes.
what are some parts of your journey that you feel like people don't ask about enough, or you wish people ask about more, or like just that you haven't? I mean, I guess technically 99% of things you haven't shared online yet, but maybe even in your personal lives with like family and friends, like what are some parts of a journey that you wish you could talk about more, but just people don't know what to ask about it, or people are shy to ask about it? Like,
I think just the fact that it can be very isolating, this journey.
yes,
Yeah.
I feel you.
Yeah.
That's
So
why Twat's moving in.
it's honestly a very difficult, it's very subjective. Everyone has difficulties, but all in all, it's very isolating, and it's very isolating in your 20s. Because once you get to a certain age, a lot of people pursue entrepreneurship in their 40s, right? When they've kind of like maximized their day job and they've realized like, oh, there's other things I can venture into.
Yeah.
In your 20s, you compromise and you sacrifice a lot of things. So my social life, even parts of my law school career, my journey, like that experience I've had to sacrifice. I flew out on Wednesday on Valentine's Day to go open a new store. Like you sacrifice in a part of your personal life too. And it's hard to be present because you're always thinking about what could go wrong or what's going to happen next. So a lot of people don't realize, like, although I'm surrounded by, 13 stores and hundreds of employees, staff, a massive team, it's a very isolating journey. Like you go into the office, we have an office, and we have a massive warehouse attached to it. But you know how because you were in corporate, you have like a little clique or like a social group, right?
For sure.
In your at your job, and at least you have someone to look forward to get coffee with. Like it's a very difficult balance between being professional and being friendly. At the end of the day, I pay their salaries, right? I'm their boss. If they're not performing up to standards, I have to be the one to can them. I can't be buddy with them.
Yeah.
So I'm going to the office, I'm doing my own thing, and yes, I'll come out and I'll socialize, but it's never fulfilling. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
You can't. There's no one I can, congregate with and talk shit about my boss to. I am my boss.
You can't talk. I mean, you can talk shit about yourself, but it's different.
I can. So.
Yeah, that part is really tough. It's like you're like alone. I mean, it's good that you have your partner that you're doing this with.
Yes.
But that's still only one person.
Yeah.
And it's like, like at a corporate job, you have like 20. Like your group of friends at corporate is usually like 10, 20 people and then even then, like all your even like people outside of your company, like even your non-coworkers, say all of your regular, this is where like I always catch myself. I hate using the word regular friends, but like your 9 to 5, your friends who work 9 to 5s, you can all relate because you're like, oh yeah, fuck my boss, didn't get a promotion. Like you can all complain about the same things. You can all look forward to that promotion. You can all like, oh, this job ain't it, I'm looking for the next. the job search is hard. Like you get it. Like it's such a relatable experience. It is extremely isolating. I feel
Yeah.
you.
It's unrelatable.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the things that I experience are relatable, which is also a conundrum in its own. It's very conflicting. Like it's very isolating, but I find it very rewarding, and it's hard. It was very hard to navigate the last couple of years, I would say, as the business catapulted.
Caterpillar? No. Catapulted.
Yeah. And then, you know, people starting becoming aware of the brand, and I had a disconnect. And it wasn't like, oh, I could just reach out to another female in the industry, because there are none.
Well, this will hopefully help you because
Make
I've actually,
friends.
yeah, no, for real, because like you believe in energy, right? So you're
Yeah.
putting the shit out,
Yeah.
and then people who's gonna like see this and be like, yo, like I feel the
I can
same,
relate. Yeah.
yeah, because you are being authentic and real, and they'll be like, yo, like this girl she's super dope. I wanna,
Thanks.
I do think that like even for me, I mean, I met Tuan through LinkedIn
Nice.
when I posted about quitting my job. And he was like, yo, congrats. Like, and then we started talking.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people that I met along the way is like, you gotta just put stuff out there on the internet.
Yeah.
And then people are like, oh, like that's cool. Like you want to call, you want to chat, and then you end up being friends after. So I think
Yeah.
that's definitely helpful.
Someone from Singapore actually reached out and was like, hey, on LinkedIn, and was like, hey, like I want to bring Hazu to Singapore. Do you have any like advice? And gave them some pointers. First checked out their portfolio to see they weren't scammers. They're legit. And then I gave them some pointers just because I was like, yeah, why not?
Yeah.
And they had a call already with the brand back in Taiwan, and then they're gonna, kind of see where it goes from there. So anything where I feel like you can bring some type of value, I think would be good. So hence why I'm like, okay, LinkedIn for me was a baby step. I've always had LinkedIn just because like when you're in undergrad, they're like, get LinkedIn.
Yeah, yeah.
Never utilized it
I
because
saw your post. You're like, hey guys, I'm gonna be posting here talking about entrepreneur. I was talking to you before the podcast. Hey guys, hey, just
here.
I'm here.
Yeah, I'm like very low, like trying to be low key about it. Hey, I'm here. I try to be low key about some things, a lot of things, but I don't think I'm very low key.
But I actually, I mean, I don't know what kind of people you want to meet on LinkedIn, but I actually think people who are in like retail businesses or food and bev, they're not on fucking LinkedIn.
They're not.
They're not.
They're not.
It's a waste of fucking time. It's all corporate people.
Yeah.
And then, but for me, it's like I work with a lot of startup founders, and they're all LinkedIn. So
Yes.
that's my crowd, right?
Yes.
Or like marketing directors who want to
Yes.
hire me. So I'm like, that's why I'm there. But
Yeah.
like, yeah, I don't think you're actually gonna meet your crowd there. But
No.
IG do be the place to be. So
Yeah.
if you like, we can cut up this video into reels.
Yeah.
Post that. That's gonna have people be like, oh, like that. Then you can meet like-minded people.
People think it's a sexy industry though, like food and bev. They're like, oh, you kind of own your own thing.
What the fuck?
Do your own thing. I've actually gone around to
That's crazy.
yeah, and I'm like, it's actually insanity.
Yo.
Because people always think it's like cute to own your own restaurant.
Dude, my parents always told me, she's like, they said that like it's either rich people who have too much money who open a restaurant, or it's like you don't know how hard it is. That's like the two,
Both.
right?
Yeah.
And because they were just saying like they have friends who open their own restaurants before, and like you're like this is like a mom and shop like food restaurant, and they're like you're locked in.
Yeah.
You can't go anywhere. The margins are thin. It's just a really tough business to make work, and it's really not like you can definitely make a lot of money, but it's definitely not sexy. I think it's definitely not.
Oh, behind the scenes is not sexy.
Yeah. I think anything that involves like physical logistics just is infinitely harder. Like food expires.
But
There's like shipping.
everyone's got to eat.
Yeah, that's facts.
Everyone's got to eat,
That is facts.
right? So it's just a matter of how you pivot. I don't think any industry is sexy.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, so I used to work at L'Oreal, and I was
Okay.
on the Lancome skincare brand.
Okay, nice.
And then so like like for our ads, like we would have Zendaya and like Penelope Cruz.
Okay.
And like all these like A-list celebrities.
Yeah.
And like that seems sexy on the outside, but like I can't even look at Zendaya anymore. I just hate her. Cause like I saw her for like hours on my damn screen, and like I would have to like make ads with her. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
whatever you're in
It's not
just
sexy.
doesn't become sexy. Like there would be like I would get free products when I was working there. But like, so like people, oh my God, like that's like a Giorgio
Love free
Armani
stuff,
lipstick. And I would just grab a bunch and give it to my mom and sisters. And
Yeah.
like you don't, you're like, Adam, you're like, we don't
You don't
care.
care.
Like this
You're
is,
desensitized.
yeah.
Yeah.
You're like, I hate this job. Like,
Yeah.
fine, these are the perks. Screw
Okay,
it.
I don't hate my job,
Yeah.
but like
different.
nothing is what it seems, right? So really important for everyone to remember is grass is not greener on the other side. Ever.
It ain't. It ain't.
Ever.
It's definitely
So
not.
just do you, stay in your own lane. I have a lot of people who are like, oh, I want to do this and that. This, like, stay in your own lane. To be honest, it's not easy.
Like recognize like you're good at something and then like
Yeah.
double triple down.
Or if you're not,
versus
it's fine
trying to-
too. Just live your life, boo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like being a lawyer, going to court is not like Suits.
Dude, I have two of my close high school friends
Mm-hmm.
who went into criminal law.
No. Oh my God.
Bro, I was like, this is awful. It's actually awful. And like I kind of feel scammed because when I grew up, when we grew up, everyone's like lawyer, doctor, engineer.
Yeah.
And like, okay, engineers turn out to be the best out of everything. But like relative to doctor and lawyers, but doctors and lawyers I think have it really tough. Like
hard.
doctors got to work like 12-hour, 14-hour, 24-hour shifts.
Yeah.
They have to deal with insurance. I mean, not here in Canada, but in the US, like insurance is a nightmare.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think being a doctor kind of like, just in terms of lifestyle, like great, you're saving people's lives. That can't take that away, right? But just in terms of like how hard it is, it fucking sucks. It's so hard. And then being a lawyer for the first like 8 years also suck. And maybe you can open your own firm after, but like,
Yeah. It's not.
yeah,
it's
no, why
not
do we
sexy.
why do we get sold on that dream as a kid that like it's so prestigious and nice? It's not. Like
Ask
it's
your mom.
I gotta call her up after. It's
Yeah,
like,
ask
what
your
is this?
mom.
She actually I have, and then even after I was like, even recently, she's like, yeah, have you considered like getting an MBA, like
gonna
further
get a job.
education? I'm like, no, what are you like? I'm never going back to school. Like that was, like I'm kind of anti MBA or like
Okay.
anti masters.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, there's so many things you can learn from like either just doing
Yeah.
or just like finding like I don't know if the professor
Yeah.
is the best person to do that. Or like I think institutions are a bit overrated, but that's just like my
No, I
experience.
agree to a certain extent. Like I think it fosters discipline to a certain degree. But
Just go run a marathon. It's also fun.
you could too. You could too. Like I think that type of discipline is cool. But in terms of like my experience at law school too, like a lot of type A students, I was just not about that life. And so they were like, oh, all Alice does is shop. And I'm like, I'm in Australia. I'm going to live my best life. I'm going to shop and go for drinks and like try to live my best life. So at the end of it, you can have it all. It's just a matter of like, not like you have to let certain things just roll off your back.
So okay, so the solitude is one thing. Any other aspects of your life or the business that you feel like
It's hard.
not just hard, but just like is people don't ask you about enough?
No one ever asked me about my business.
Really?
Yeah.
Like no one. What do you mean by no one? As in
Like
like
no one. Period.
what do you mean? Like
No one
that-
ever asks me, like unless I'm out and about. Like I was at this law gala last 2 weeks ago and they were just like, oh, what do you do? I'm like, oh, it's a little complicated, but this is what I do. They're like, oh, okay. And that's like the only time when
But
people
when you
ask.
say no one, as in like I'm including your friends.
My friends don't ask me. They know it's a tough gig. They ask me like, oh, what's next type of thing.
So I feel like, okay, I don't know if you feel the same way about this, but like I'm someone that, like, say if I'm going out with my friend's friend, so I don't even know that person, complete stranger, right?
Yeah.
But I meet them at like a dinner party. I will leave maybe knowing them better than my friend did. Cause I'm very curious. Like I love getting to know people.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like, I feel like for me, that's like my way of showing that I'm curious and care about you. Cause I'm like, whoa, your shit is fascinating. Like, oh, you do origami. Like, how did you get into that? Oh, like, and then like, tell me more versus like, oh, cool. You do oh, cool. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so that's my, whatever, like, that's my way of showing if people of that I care. And I've been trying to grapple with this recently where I sometimes feel like when people, maybe similar to the experience, when people don't ask, I'm like, I guess you don't care. That's cool, right? Like
Oh,
I kind of take it that way a bit,
yeah.
but then I'm also learning that not everybody shows that they care by asking.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to like grapple with that too.
So it's not that my friends don't care about what I do. It's just I don't, like I said, I'm very interpersonal. So I don't identify myself with my career. Like when I show up to meet strangers or other people, like I want them to see me for me, just kind, honest, and just, there to
Yeah,
have a
like
good
as the
time.
person
Yeah, as
minus
a
all the
person.
yeah.
Because what I found is, probably because of the 9 to 5ers or 9 to 9ers, like those professionals, they show up as their identity is their career.
Facts.
Hi, I'm blank and I'm in investment banking.
Yeah.
I think that's tacky because there's so much more to you than just your job.
Yeah, it's like second sentence, what do you do?
Yeah, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care if you care about what I do. This is who I am, right? I want to show up as me. So it's not that my friends don't care about the cool shit I'm doing. They're the friends I have now, my curated circle. They support my wins, and when I share, they love that. They always ask like, "Oh, what are you doing?" Blah 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 type of thing. But it's just like, oh, when I meet people, I don't go out of my way to ask, hey, what do you do?
I see.
So it's kind of reciprocated, I guess, because I don't pry into their career. They also don't really ask me either.
I see. Okay, wait. So my question was what do people like not ask you about enough
ask
that
me-
you wish that they did? I guess like that's like because it's like I guess you're totally fine with them not asking and it doesn't really bother you.
Yeah.
But is it a topic that you are interested in? Like if they were to ask, like you are down to talk about?
Yeah, I'm happy to share, but my thing is that once we start talking about what I do, the focus is on me. And like I want to have a conversation like this. So in those social settings, you just keep asking and asking because there's so many different layers, which is fine. But I want to give time to them as well. That's kind of my conflict.
But then they could be thinking the same thing.
I know. It's weird. So that's why it's a conflict. So maybe I'm kind of, I don't know. So yeah, if they ask, I want them to have their time to shine. Because everything that, like anything that anyone does can be interesting, can be cool. It's just my story is a little bit different.
I see. That makes sense. Do you feel like this is getting kind of meta?
Yeah.
But do you feel like you feeling that is part of that, like maybe your hesitancy to let your candle shine because your story is as much as it's crazy and complicated, it's also like I guess sometimes it's harder for you to take in yourself, but like very extraordinary,
Thank you.
right?
Yeah.
So then like do you right? I'm playing
a little
playing
bit.
therapist a little bit, right?
No, yeah.
Do you
a
feel
little
like
bit.
that's a little bit?
I think so because I think even now it's hard for me to call myself like a CEO. It's like just me. I'm just having fun.
Yeah.
Struggling, but having fun. Like I'm just doing me. And I think anyone can do it. It's just a matter of like you put your mind to it and just do it.
You ever played instruments as a kid?
I played violin.
Okay, you ever went to like recitals?
Yeah, I did.
Did you have this experience where like at one point I was in grade 10 or level 10 of like RC
RCM.
RCM whatever.
Yeah.
And then like I was probably the second most senior person in like my teacher's like class. So we had a recital, but then like the three people leading up to me, like they went by reverse order of seniority. So like the youngest kids go first and then like the oldest kid. And then the third person that went before me were like grade 8, grade 9, and grade 9. But then because I didn't know the songs they were playing, it sounded so much better or complicated than I did. Whereas like the songs that I played, I was like, oh, it's not even like that special. Like, cause I knew it because you know the song, you're like, oh, it's easy because I know it. But then the stuff that they play, even though technically, now that I see, oh, it's an easier song, but I thought they were way better than me, and I was like really insecure as a kid. So like wondering if it's like the same, like, oh, like this shit, what I do isn't that crazy or isn't that hard, but it's just because you like nothing is hard once you know it, I guess, right?
Yeah. I think with our industry, it's a never ending unknowing game. But I just feel confident in kind of, like we've gone through some really hard shit the last couple of years, like litigation and just being able to do law school and this, like looking back at it, I'm like, oh, I did it. I've accomplished it. So to me, it's not a big deal. Maybe that's my mindset right now. And it's kind of like, it's not really like, oh my God, what's next? But it's really being present and taking it in.
Yeah.
So
Being present do be hard. I find that I am more present
yeah.
when I say like on a Friday I'm going out with like my fiance for like dinner and stuff.
Yeah.
I try to work really hard Thursday and Friday morning.
Yeah.
So that all the big headaches are like gone.
Yeah.
Or that even if the big headaches aren't gone, I've done whatever the hell I can to deal with it.
Yeah.
So that nothing is left like untouched. I'm not like burdened by stuff. You know what I mean? But I do think like, oh, here's another thing I've done during the holiday was I've done some like life trajectory planning where so basically we looked at, okay, like what do we want our family life to be like? What do we want our social life to be like? What do we want our physical health? We just said, hey, this is what we want. Why do we want it? How are we going to get there? And then there's no timeline. It's just like, this is just our life, right?
Yeah.
And then one of the categories is just money, right? And so we're like, okay, if we make the money we make right now in this business, this is what we could do. We could afford to do X, Y, Z. If we make double of that and the business does great, or quadruple of that, this is what we could do. Ooh, that's kind of fancy. Let's not. What if we did half of what we did? Like, what if the business goes to shit magically? Would we be fine? We're still fine. Like we can still get by. Nothing,
Yeah.
no one's gonna die.
Yeah.
And then so like on the days that are tougher,
Yeah.
I'm just like, yeah, like honestly, like
It's not that serious.
it's not that serious. We've already like financially speaking, like the money problems aren't really like whatever problems you can solve with money,
It's not a problem.
not a problem anymore.
Yeah.
Right. All the big ones. If this, you want a $1 trillion mansion, just don't want it. You're
Yeah,
right.
it's
That
fine.
problem's gone.
Yeah.
And then the focus is really like on, being present,
Yeah.
being with people you love, taking care of yourself. Like that's like
Yeah.
that's the vibes.
Yeah. So I'm very unserious when it comes to a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot.
Yeah.
I just live.
I love that. I think something I'm gonna make a video about this
Yeah.
down the road, but I think that people who are too intelligent,
Yeah.
it's just like a major hindrance to entrepreneurial success.
What is there to think about? At the end of the day, if you're not dying, then you're already better than a lot of people in this world.
Are you Korean or Chinese?
I'm Chinese.
Okay, do you know this is like a big thing in the Korean community? There's like this high IQ society called, have you heard of it? Like I forgot the name, but there's this society of people where like if you test over 130 whatever IQ as a kid, you get invited to this club. It's this exclusive club and you're part of a member, right? It's just like
Okay.
gift to kids on crack.
Okay.
So there's this cool study where like if I think the top 1% of earners in America, I think it's somewhere around like 500K a year, somewhere around that range. And then the top 1% in this club is like 80K. So it's like it just shows that like if you're actually hyper intelligent,
Yeah.
it's like actually a handicap for at least just in
think-
terms of how much money you make, it's actually a
Yeah.
handicap because you're probably gonna go super deep into academics, which doesn't make much money. And if you go into entrepreneurship, you need to be stupid enough to just do it. Like you
There's
need to
always
be
a trade-off.
Yeah, there's always
Yeah.
a hard trade-off, and I'm like that's why I'm like, man, I'm glad that I wasn't born too smart. It's
There's
very
always a
nice.
trade-off. Like I said, I'm not book smart, but I
Yeah.
just try.
Yeah,
You can just try.
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I think that's like overall probably the best advice for anybody looking to start is to just try.
Yeah.
And then you figure it out.
Yeah.
Like you have to just start. You got to get strapped in first. And then
Exactly.
you
Strap it in. You gotta
strap it in,
strap
then
it
you
in.
figure it out, right? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's too late now. Like I'm already strapped in. Got to figure it out.
Yeah, and it's okay to make mistakes. Just be accountable. That's it. Accountability is one of the biggest things that people don't have right now.
That's really interesting. Accountability. Do you feel like that's similar to entitlement? Like that's like one of my gripes with people
hate
here.
entitlement.
People here in like the Western, I would say like world. Like there's a lot more entitlement here in North America than Asia, in my opinion. Yes.
Oh, imagine we're just talking and it's just
Yeah, sometimes, just in case something goes wrong. Is it still rolling?
Okay.
Nice. Um,
The entitlement thing.
yeah, like people. So I had I was hiring for a copywriter,
Okay.
and if she's listening to this, like,
Sorry.
yeah, it's fine. Um, no, I'm not even sorry.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah, not
it's
sorry.
funny because she lives in Tuan's building, and
I was gonna be like, she lives with Tuan. Okay.
no, she lives in Tuan's building.
Yeah.
And she's applying to my position, and I was like, oh, like cool. Like I saw her like just apply via the Google form,
Yeah.
and she's like, oh, like I actually have a lot of experience. Like I don't
I don't
think
need to
I need to
apply.
do a case study. And I'm like, okay. And then my Google form also happens to ask for age. Now in retrospect, I'm like, is that discriminatory? I don't think so. I just needed to know.
Okay.
But she's like according to like Ontario law, like you're not
ESA,
allowed to
employee
you're not allowed to
standards.
ask for you're not allowed to ask for free work, which is but every fucking company ever
Yeah.
in tech at least does case studies, right? Which is technically free work.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, yo, if you're that uptight, like why even message me in the first place? Like
Yeah.
leave me alone. Like don't come I'm not begging you to work here.
Yeah.
You know, like people like that, I'm like, please, like and I have no problem with people who are hedonistic and say but a hedonist who's just free, like, yo, I make this much, this is my job, I don't give a fuck, I'm gonna cruise and I'm gonna live and enjoy my best life. Yo, I love that for you. Those people are happy, but I hate people who are like entitled to say, oh, like I want to make a lot of money and I want this promotion, but I don't want the.
Or like I
the,
deserve it. Blah, blah,
yeah.
blah. No,
It's like,
I don't vibe with that.
yeah, you can't have the cake and eat it, right? Like you can't
No.
have both. So people who want both, I'm like that. The entitlement piece, that's what bothers me with like
The entitlement.
the youngings or like the people in the Western world.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I concur. I think entitlement and like the selfishness, it's like it goes hand in hand, right?
Yeah.
So I don't vibe with that. And
Yeah.
I'm very careful in terms of who I hire now too because of entitlement. So we've had some bad experiences with entitled people and you know, they just it gets to a point where they don't show it right off the bat for my instance at least.
Because you can act in an interview. Like anybody can act like anything.
And they play on a show and it gets to a point where they just take my kindness for weakness. And I don't mess like that. Once I catch it, it's like I'll let you go once or twice. But don't treat me as stupid.
My therapist has a great quote. She said, when people show you who they are,
Yes.
believe them.
Yes.
And I'm like, yo, that's so
That's
fire.
Mic drop.
That's so fire because like
And
that's like
it's
you know
been and that goes hand in hand. Like I don't deal well with betrayal and like I always give people the benefit of the doubt because I feel like for me in a lot of opportunities I've been given the benefit of the doubt. So I try to do that
yeah,
the
you pay
same
that forward, yeah.
for either my staff, my employees, or like people in my personal life. And that was a hard struggle last year too. The last 2 years, it was just like people just keep showing you who they are, and I just keep letting them like give them second, third, fourth chances. And it's time to just put your foot down. I think it's more relatable as a woman.
Yeah.
It's a woman thing too.
Because you like
You're a
is it
nurturer. Like at
like I
heart.
can save this guy. I can change him.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
it that energy?
A little bit.
A little
yeah,
bit?
It's like
Yeah.
a very nurturing, like, okay, well, maybe they didn't mean it that way. And you just keep giving them the benefit of the doubt. And then it comes to a point where it's just a hard stop.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really tough because it's purely up to you to make that decision between can this person change? Do they deserve a second chance versus am I cutting them off of their main source of income of their life? Like it's a tough kind of thing.
And it's harder when it's like woman to woman because they lean in differently. Yeah, they lean in differently. They're like, oh, I'm going through these type of hardships, this and that. And like, sometimes when I step back and I think about it, it's like what they have said the same thing was had it been my other managing partner in the room.
Oh shit.
As a man.
They're playing them cards.
Yeah.
They're playing different cards based on
Yeah. But I regret nothing. Like I don't regret giving anyone second, third, fourth, fifth chances ever. Like in personal life or in
I feel like
work.
sometimes when people go through hardships,
They're just kind
part of what I think is I'm like, no, because when people like they'll go through some really hard things and then say their work performance lacks, I'm like, that's totally fine with me, but you can make it up after. So like, why aren't you making it up? Like,
entitlement.
It's another quote from not my therapist, this guy I see online. He's like, you should check him out. His name is Dr. K.
Okay.
He's a Harvard trained psychiatrist who,
Yeah.
before he became a psychiatrist, dropped out of college due to video game addiction.
Ooh.
Went back to India, his
Okay.
like hometown, to become a monk. Then came back and went to Harvard. So he's like, he
nice.
mixes the East and the West. Because
Yeah,
I don't know if you relate, but like, you're into the energy stuff.
Yeah.
I am into that.
Yeah.
And I'm also into Western science, but I think
Yes.
Western science is too sterile.
Yes,
And I think
I agree.
Eastern stuff is too esoteric and too too fluff. So he mixes them both and he strikes
Okay.
a balance.
Yeah.
But anyways, he's saying, what were we talking about again? What was the quote? Oh, he says, it's not your fault, but it's your responsibility.
I agree.
Right? So it's like, say someone had a depressive episode for 2 weeks and they can't show up for work. Take your time. Go do your thing. That is
Yeah.
not your fault. You are depressed. Do your thing. Okay, 2 weeks off, you're back now. Now that you're back, it's your responsibility
Yes.
to do some shit about it, to go see a therapist, to do work
Exactly.
extra hard, right? So it's like, I can give people, like, I have one employee who like repeatedly got sick for like 4 weeks in a row. He got sick 3 times. I'm like, that's totally fine. I'm like, you can't help that. Like, and I know you're trusted, and I trust you, and I know you're not bullshitting me. But then he does make it up. Like, when he's back, like, he's killing it. So I'm like, I don't, like, you have a weak immune system. Like, it is what it is. Like, what
Yeah.
can you do,
Go
right?
out more.
But just like help, like, make it up when you're back, or like when you are healthy, like, show that you are really back, and that you're not like slacking off, right?
It's
And,
the
so
accountability piece.
yes, yeah. Accountability, entitlement goes hand in hand. It's the lack,
weird.
it's
Yeah.
the lack of accountability that
Yeah.
contributes to entitlement, right? That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. I think it's the accountability piece. And with the law school and just, like articling and practicing that part of my brain, I see it, I'm less emotional now. I see it very objective. I see the facts. So I would say now as a leader, it's less like leaning into the, oh, are you okay? This type of thing. This is like, I just give it to them as a facts. Like,
Yeah.
this is what happened. This is where you didn't perform, whether, personally or at work. This is kind of my rundown. Like,
Yeah.
these are the facts. This is where I felt like you didn't lean in, you didn't perform up to
Yeah.
my standards. And this is what I see in terms of next steps. Can you or can you not do it? Do you acknowledge that? Acknowledgement, accountability. These are all very underrated traits that people don't have anymore. People don't know how to navigate with.
Yeah, so this reminds me of a crazy like experience I've had.
Yeah.
Pre-COVID, when you like, I'm sure you might have experienced this when people interview for corporate jobs. You have to go through group interviews.
Yes.
And like, it's literally like a mini reality show
It's
where
so
like
bizarre.
you get put into a room with like 20, 30 people, and they'll ask you questions like, oh, well, like, who do you think should be hired? Make it like, and it's like, you're literally like tested on your character.
Yeah.
And I'm like, back then I'm like, this is so fucked up. And now I'm like, maybe they're onto something. Like,
Yeah.
like, cause when in a group environment, you can simulate reality in a way
Yes.
that you can't do a one-on-one.
I agree.
And then so you put these people in really tough spots, and you get to see how they act. As much as yeah, anyways, I'm like, hey, Walmart was like, I did it with Walmart.
Okay.
I'm like, hey, like, Walmart's like one of the most accomplished brands in the world. Like,
Yeah.
HR must have been onto something to do these group interviews, right? Like, I'm sure it's not for no reason, and it's just not to
There's science
torture
behind
you.
it.
Yeah, there's science behind it. It's like,
Yeah.
this is better than no group interview.
Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
some things to learn from corporate stuff.
You see like who's gonna throw you under,
Yeah.
and like it's crazy, like these simulations. And I don't think I could make it in the corporate world now.
I mean, I think like, people always say this, like, entrepreneurs are like, we're just outcasts from the corporate world, right?
honestly.
You're just literally built different in like that way. Because I had a really terrible time where I was really passionate and I cared a lot about stuff, and I hated like, so much of corporate is like, you're putting on an act, and you're like, hey guys, so welcome to the monthly like meeting.
Yeah.
We're so excited, like,
Yeah, you're drinking
just
the
talk
Kool-Aid.
like yourself, bro. Like, this,
Yeah.
and I think that's a big part of, like, people would be so exhausted after working all day. They would wear a mask. They have to go to happy hour. They have to get fucking shift face on a Friday, where I'm like, I don't think I need to numb anything like this. I show up as myself, and that's really enjoyable, right? Like, I think we're a lot of entrepreneurs are just outcasts where you can't fit into the mold.
Yeah.
So you go and do your own thing.
Well, I always say like I feel like I'm the black sheep, whether it was like within my peer group or just like at work and stuff. And it wasn't like it was a weird thing to come to acceptance with. It wasn't, it's always had that, like you've always had kind of that feeling where, oh, I'm a little bit different. I really can't pinpoint what or why. And I thought like, it was because I didn't get the same co-op as everyone else in undergrad. Like I was like, shit, I didn't get into the Big Four.
I was like, oh, my life is
I
different.
know. I'm like, oh my God, this is so weird, but it's okay. Like, let's try next time. So I got into Big Four and I was like, oh, like, what is going on here? Like, everyone's just drinking the free coffee, just really excited. And I'm like,
Yeah.
this is weird. I'm like, I really don't care about what you did on the weekend. Or it's like, why are we doing this spreadsheet? I don't care. And they're like, you're just a co-op student, do it. And I'm like, but why?
Yeah. Yeah, you question how things work and you're like, this is really help. And then you realize like even Big Four level companies, their processes are stupid as fuck.
Yeah.
So you're like, wait, like if the biggest companies are ran by idiots, like I think I can do a lot better.
And like your senior manager or director is not even intelligent. They're just liked.
Yeah, middle management is
Which is fine. Like I'm like, oh, if that's where if that's how you get to that level, then I'm like, I will never be there because I don't care whether you like me or not.
Yeah.
That's like my big thing, and I've always kind of been like that. I don't care if you like me. I like myself. That's enough.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah, it's so much of like, and there's such a crazy power dynamic in corporate.
Oh, yeah.
Where you have very little leverage, whereas in business, I mean, it's different with us and our employees, but with say your clients or like even customers, like say your customers disrespected the staff, like you don't have to kneel down and be like, oh, I'm sorry. Like you can say, well, like you're not welcome to this facility anymore. Or, like you can draw boundaries and have respect.
Yeah.
And those are not the things that you can really get at corporate, to be honest. Like that's one of the things that I think really sucks. You don't feel like you have a lot of control over your life and the direction it's headed in. It's like in the hands of some person that's and
you're just an employee ID number.
Yeah.
Like we had a store opening. We have a store at Yonge and Finch. And during grand opening, this lady was just being crazy. And she started like just being insane. Borderline like physical assault.
Oh my God.
So I was like, you need to leave. And so she like pushed me and I was like, you need to leave now. So like it gets to that level. Yeah. But it was the disrespect towards my cashier I couldn't stand.
Yeah.
It's like, no, she was so entitled. Like, I need this, that, this. And I was like, no, you're leaving. And then she started throwing stuff on the ground. And so I was like, no, get out of here. And profanity.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's when I was like, okay, that's what real bosses are. You stand up for your staff.
Yes.
Not every customer is the right customer for you. Win some, you lose some. And she was like, she put money on the counter. She's like, I'm going to buy this. And I'm like, no, you're not. This is a private establishment. Leave. And she's like, I'm going to write to head office. I'm like, great. My name is Alice. You're writing to me.
Yeah.
And it's just like the sense of entitlement I can't tolerate. Like everyone's just trying their best, especially post COVID. Like, you know how every industry right now is not bueno. Especially food and bev. It's been a difficult pivot. So I'm like, my staff, they're not here to deal with all these entitlement habits that have been developed out of COVID. We don't tolerate that. And I think leadership speaks volumes too.
Yeah, you set the tone, right? Yeah. If you're like, oh, customer is king, deal with that. And they would have to deal with that. And that is not fun at all. I always say that, like, I tell all my team and that like work is meant to be challenging. It's meant to be fun, but it's not meant to be like draining, or it's not meant to feel like it's bullshit. Like it's like everything we do, this is useful and productive. Yeah. And if our clients are being assholes, like we'll just fire them. And like we can do without one or two or three clients. Like it doesn't matter to our business. And I'm like, they feel like, I'm sure your cashier and team feels the same. It's like they feel really good that
they have back.
Yes, mommy and daddy are protect. You know what I mean? Like that's a really good feeling that like, hey, we don't have to put up with bullshit. Like that's really dope.
And I think this type of confidence and security came with experience. Like you're young, you're running a brand, people try to take advantage of you. And then, you know, when shit hits the fan and you get to a certain point where you're just like, okay, like enough is enough. That's when you start building the confidence to push back for certain things and really set boundaries. So, because I think I've always been someone that advocates for like kindness, you know, I wear my heart on my sleeve for a lot of things. That's why I don't go out and intermingle with whoever, whenever. There's a lot of these socials that I choose not to go to because I feel like, you know, energy is very precious.
Thanks for coming here.
I don't
I
think.
appreciate it.
So that's why I'm like, I've never regretted wearing my heart on my sleeve because if shit is the fan, it hasn't jaded me. Like I still run my business the way I run it, where I try to show up authentic, honest, kind, and I help out where I can. And even in my personal relationships too, it's like, okay, well, you may have been scorned by, you know, bad friends or friends that didn't show up the way that you expected, but it's a learning experience.
Yeah.
And you just show up like, okay, just do you, boo.
That makes sense.
Stay in your lane, do you. Things will work out. It's not the end of the world.
So I don't, so you can tell, like, I kind of just, like you said, raw dog these.
Yeah.
There are no prepped questions, but I do think it's cool to have some reoccurring questions. So one of them that I have is, you know, like, have you seen the Billie Eilish interview where she like reacts to her old interview from like a year ago and stuff?
No.
Okay, I mean, there's the series where like she did the same interview 5 years in a row with the same questions, and she would react. Something along the lines of that is like, say a year from now we're doing this podcast again. So like to Alice a year from now, any messages to her, like any intentions or anything you want to say to her, in a year from now that's interesting or meaningful to you.
Yeah. You're fucking sick. Don't forget.
Never forget it.
Never forget that you're sick. Keep staying in your own lane. You're doing good. You do you, boo. And yeah, just grind it out.
Yeah. Any on the note of future looking, like what are like people love to set New Year's resolutions. Like we're still in the beginning of the year, February, right? Whatever. What are you trying to do this year, or like the next 1 to 2 or 3? Like what's like next, I guess.
I think it's just really be present and enjoy the moment. This was a very difficult one because even I was doing some reflective work at the end of last year, and I was just thinking like, what did you do this year? And I was like, oh my God, I didn't do anything. And then my fiance was like, you wrote the bar, you passed the bar, you opened a bunch of stores, you traveled like majority of the year. Like, what do you mean you didn't do anything?
So you're a little lost in the sauce. Like you're like,
I was.
You're thick in it, and then you don't realize what you've done and accomplished, and it's hard to savor and enjoy it, right?
Yeah. So I would say be present and take more photos and videos.
That's actually part of making content online is that you will be reminded to take photos and videos because you need B-roll footage for your videos.
Yeah.
So it's a very great, like, it's everything is aligned. Yeah, that's great.
I love that. And I think, you know, that's one way of keeping myself accountable is by making content so I can reflect back on it.
Yeah. I mean, this whole thing, like by making content and like speaking and sharing your story online, it's like you're on this like hike, you know, up this mountain of, you know, being a business owner, and then like all you're doing is looking at the next step and where to put your foot in, and this is a great way to turn around and be like, oh, like I'm on this, like I'm like 4,000 feet up, and the view is crazy, and like, and you look at all the crazy trails that you've gone up, and then you get to tell those stories, versus day to day you're just like hiking.
Yeah, you're just hiking, like
it's just
trying to resolve, like, you know, put out a fire where you see it. Just hoping for the best. And I think it's crazy to even look back on like, oh, what was I doing a year ago?
Yeah, that's nice. So like living in the present, being present, and then like, I guess like, like sharing your story online is going to help with that a lot, which is great. I love that. I feel like we covered most things. Do you feel like there's some tad bits like, oh, actually, I forgot to ask you, what do you do for fun in your personal life?
What do I do for fun?
Yeah.
I travel a lot,
Uh-huh.
but like day to day life, I do a lot of Pilates.
Oh,
Yeah.
yo, that shit looks hard. Like you've seen
It's,
those videos, like guys trying, they're like fucking
yeah.
shaking, they're like
Yeah.
vibrating, like.
So I started my Pilates journey like 8 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And now I do 3 times a week. I have two different trainers. I go one-on-one with them each once a week, and then I do group class for maintenance. And yeah, there's never been a class where I come out of and I'm like, oh, that was easy. Every class is so challenging and actually just destroys you. Like,
And you're hella in the moment during. Like
Yeah.
you're all in it. That's
Yeah.
all your mind
and
can think.
it's gone to a point where one of my trainers, who's been a trainer for over a decade, is like, hey, like you should become a Pilates instructor. So maybe that's a new venture.
That's a side quest, a cute little side quest.
Yeah, because I really like it and I've seen a lot of benefits for my body. I have bad posture from like working and
Yeah.
driving all the time, and just like I have scoliosis.
What do you love about it versus just like working out or CrossFit or like running, like all the other different forms of exercise? What do you love about it?
To be honest, it's because I'm lying down most of the time.
What?
That was an epiphany I had when I was actually doing Pilates one day, and I was like, oh my God, I love it. Like you feel the burn, but you're lying down majority of the time.
So you're like resting, but also working very hard, but also resting.
Yeah.
Oh,
I would say Pilates is one of the best investments I've ever made in my whole life.
yeah.
It's so underrated. You have to do it, and you have to. Like it changes
Yeah.
your life.
Yeah, you are like I've heard many people online rave about it. And you're like the first person I know who's like raving about it.
Yeah.
Most people rave about like CrossFit and stuff, and I'm like, I've given that a try, I'm good.
I
But
don't-
this is very interesting.
I don't like the feeling of like, like when you're sweating and you feel like your fat is burning off, like the itching. Yeah, I don't like that.
I see. So you're not sweating like crazy in Pilates?
No,
Or you
not really.
is your heart rate up?
Yes, it's
Okay.
low intensity, high reps, a lot of balance and mobility work that you have to do. And I don't like running. I don't like swimming. I don't like the gym is. I don't like all the people at the gym.
Yeah, no, the gym is a chaotic experience. I will advocate for running just because have you given it a try and you hate it?
Like a long time ago.
Okay, so like I used to think people who were like running are psychotic,
Yeah, and you are now psychotic.
certified.
Yeah.
12 months ago, the exact same time I started building my business, I decided to train for the half marathon in May.
Yeah.
And then like me and my fiance were like running, it was like February, I mean around this time of the year, but it was snowing. So we'd be running like -5 weather. And what was really cool about it though is like you do that and then you're like, yeah, running the business is actually pretty easy. That's the biggest benefit is like you force yourself to do something so hard, and you like mentally brace yourself and then you feel great after, and then the rest of you're like, oh my God, I have to send this email to a client. Fucking easy because compared to the run, you're like, that's
Yeah.
nothing. Like usually,
That's
whereas before you're like, you think about that all day and it's all
Anxiety.
consuming, right? But
Yeah.
compared to running, you're like, it's nothing.
Yeah. Then you would love Pilates.
Because it's hella hard.
Yeah, I'll show you some videos.
Okay, sweet. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think, like I said, with Pilates, every class, never have been one class where I came out of Pilates and I was like, oh, that was easy. Or, oh, that was fine. No, it's
Just
always
constant
been
dying.
constant it's getting raw dogged by everything.
I love that.
Difficulty.
You have to go to a studio to do it, or you have a setup at home?
I go to a studio because I need someone to keep me accountable. I
Sweet.
can pay money to feel the burn.
Yeah, for sure. That's,
With running, I'll be like, oh, I give myself compassion.
you got to do it with people. Like I can only run with people. I don't run alone. But
Okay, you're not psychotic enough.
yeah, I'm not psychotic enough. Yeah, I don't wake up at like 6 a.m. and go for a run in
No,
the
I have
dark.
friends who do that. He's in trading. I don't know. He was in investment banking, but he's one of the most disciplined people I know in my life. He used to be like varsity swim captain or something
Holy.
back at Waterloo.
Yeah, swimming practices are super early.
Like
Yeah.
5 a.m.
Yeah, they're crazy.
And he's like, I have to eat a certain amount of calories to maintain my weight and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay,
Damn.
do you?
Yeah. But yo, thank you so much for coming through. I feel like we covered everything,
Yeah.
but do you feel like is there stuff that you want to touch on a bit more? But like I feel like it was
This is a good, summary of
yeah.
what I've been doing, who I am.
Yeah. Are you gonna like post on like YouTube and IG and like do like what are you thinking in terms of building your online brand? Like that I guess we haven't talked about what's your plan.
I
What
think
do you-
TikTok and IG, just
Yeah.
because I consume those the best.
Yeah.
And LinkedIn, give them a little sneak peek of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still, very carefully exposing myself to the world. I like TikTok because I think it's definitely a place where you can just be candid and be yourself.
Yeah, I think you do great on TikTok. You just like yap to the camera and like
A little bit. I like to post my little outfits and, kind of give people a little sneak peek of my life. It's hard because I do so much.
yeah.
It's
And
like,
you have to remember to document, and that's hard. Yeah.
yeah. And just like in terms of my niche, I guess I don't have a niche because I'm not like a law girly where, you're filming like, in the courtroom all the time, or, as a business owner, I'm baking and stuff like that. I'm more the brains of the brand, right?
Yeah, this is like I feel like people would follow you because they're just like you're almost like a celebrity in the sense of like no, because people are like, whoa, like this lifestyle is so
Yeah.
out of the ordinary that they're curious, like they want to know what it's like.
Okay.
I feel like that's what it is. You know what I
Someone
mean?
actually at the store opening, I was in Richmond, BC, this past weekend. Someone was like, "Hi, Alice, can I get an autograph?" And I was like, "Why do you know me?"
Yeah, how did they know you?
From Instagram, like from Hazukido's Instagram. I was like featured once, and they're like,
Yeah, I was reading the comments there, and then people were like so supportive.
"Yeah,
People were like, "Oh my god, slay!" Like, "Oh my god, I love Hazukido even more." Da 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 da.
thanks, girls."
Like you build that like love and like the more they know you,
Yeah.
the more I mean like I think like the more authentic you are, the more that people are gonna love you or they don't mess with you, right?
Yeah,
But the
that's
people who
fine.
love you will love you so much and they'll like support you even more. Like that's
Yeah.
like the beauty of sharing, opening up. And stuff.
Yeah. So that's why I'm like, it's important to be candid because we're all people at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You can get here.
Yeah,
too.
and you've been, I feel, my sense, I mean, I've only met you like today, but I feel like you are hella authentic on camera.
Oh, am I?
Yeah, I get that sense.
Okay.
I feel like, I mean, maybe I'll find out off camera that you're way more like whatever. Yeah, but then like I actually feel like you're very like candid and honest about stuff.
Yeah.
And that's like really tough to do. That's really, really tough to do, I think.
I only know
for
how to
most
be
people.
me. Take it or leave it. It is
Bill-
what it is, boo.
Yeah.
Stay in your lane.
Yeah. So yeah, I think you're gonna have a really fun time making content.
Okay.
The less in your own head you are, the more you're cool with just being yourself, the easier content creation is gonna feel. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's like I'm sure Tuan tells you this, but it's like he can make viral content for like other people. He's really good at it.
Yeah.
But then like it's hard for him to do it for himself because he gets his own head. And that's like the same. Like the moment you look at your own work, you're like, is this good or not? Versus looking at other people. It's so easy to tell. Oh, you can improve this. You can improve that. So like I feel like you're gonna have an easier time not getting in your own way.
Yeah.
In that sense.
I mean, I look at my content now, even though it's not great. I'm like, oh my God, I love your outfit. Like made to me. So you have to always support
Yeah.
yourself. Like you have to love yourself.
For sure. You gotta hype yourself up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's only one of you in this world. No
Yeah.
one will ever be you. You, that girl.
Facts. Yeah. I look at my video, I'm like, dang, it's good.
Yeah. I'm like, oh my God. Maybe this is just earth sign energy right now.
Yeah. We're just like I hear when you edit your own videos, you hear your own voice like 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And like, I'm like, yeah, my voice sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
And then Sally's like, you're crazy. Like no one ever said. I'm like, but I like the sound of my voice. I'm like,
This is a Virgo man.
it's a Virgo.
Virgo man. Oh my God.
Anyways, yo, thanks for coming on. This has been fun. Let's go grab some food and then we'll eat some cookies. Sally baked some cookies. They're delicious.
Yay. Okay.
Awesome.
Sick,
All right.
sick.
It's a wrap.